This video is made possible by my patrons on Patreon. Hello everyone, my name is Ziamaro and welcome to Battlerite Sage. Today I want to talk about something that I actually promised back in January, and my friend reminded me of this the other day. Apparently I said this: I'm going to do a Battlerite basics video about peeling in depth at some point, maybe this week, and then just never made the video later that week. Before I carry on, it's Friday today, so if you're watching this around the time it goes out, I'll be streaming over at twitch.tv/BattleriteSage. So I know this is a topic I did kind of cover before, but I did it entirely from a support's perspective. So this time I'm going to talk a little bit more generally about peeling. So first off, what is peeling? If you've ever played a champion like Lucy, and I know I said I wasn't going to do this from a support perspective, but she's just a really good example of this. So yeah, if you've played Lucy, you'll know what it's like to have a Shifu that just won't leave you alone. And Lucy does have a few ways of getting rid of him, like if you get a well-timed fear on him, but Shifu does have a few options to avoid that. And if he does outplay your fear, or he manages to catch you when your abilities are on cooldown, you won't really be able to get him off you. And that's where peeling comes in. So that Shifu sees you use your roll and your fear, and he's hellbent on killing you. If left to the 1v1, you're probably dead. He just has more cooldowns than you. Let's say the Ashka on your team sees that you're having trouble and starts putting pressure on the Shifu. If the Ashka does enough damage, he might be able to force the Shifu to retreat. And if that's not possible, he could just petrify Shifu with his EXQ. Either way, the Ashka has just made some space for you, so he's just peeled the Shifu off you. I'm sure most of you already knew what peeling meant, but when should you peel? Honestly, it's all about game sense. In an ideal world, you should have a good idea of where everyone is at any given moment. You should also have an idea of what cooldowns each person in the arena has, but at the very least, keep track of where they all are. Ultimately, if you want to get good at peeling, you need to have awareness of where your team is and what cooldowns everybody has. If your Thorn has no space and no husk, they will need peels. If your Jade has no stealth and no space, they'll also need peels. Often you might think of the support needing peels, but honestly, melee players need peeling just as often. If you expect your melee player to go in and make space for you, they're probably going to use a bunch of cooldowns to do it. So you'd better make use of that space. If you just let them go in and totally ignore the opponent's range DPS, they're going to absolutely abuse your melee player for it. If, on the other hand, you use the space your melee makes to pressure their backline, the opponent will be more focused on staying alive than punishing your melee. Honestly, if you can get really good at keeping track of where everyone is and what cooldowns they have, peeling will just come naturally. If you can't get your head around when someone might need peeling, I would highly recommend trying out different roles. If you're a melee player and you just can't understand why your support always seems to fall back and die in spawn, maybe they're just bad, but try playing support for yourself and see what kind of situation causes you to fall back like that. So then, how do you peel? Honestly, it all comes down to punishing people for using their abilities. If a melee player manages to get to your back line without using any abilities, they're probably not under enough pressure. If they have used cooldowns to get there, then they're in a position where you can punish them for it. Literally just doing damage to someone when they don't have all their cooldowns will force them to make a decision. Should they stay in the fight and risk getting punished, or do they use their remaining cooldowns to back off? If they back off, you've successfully peeled them. If they stay in the fight, just kill them. It's win-win. So, as a team, you need to make sure that everyone on the enemy team feels threatened. That's the first step that you need to take. So, if there's an Ashka on the flank just free casting, he absolutely should not be there. If he feels like he can be there, he's clearly not under enough pressure. You need the enemy to know if they're going to make a bold move like that, they're going to be punished for it. So, first step, make sure the enemy can't just walk right up to you. Next, you need to force their cooldowns with yours. So, that Ashka's still there on the flank. Let's say you're playing Thorn. If you're not close enough to just do damage to him in melee range, try and entangle him. How you play that particular move depends on how good the Ashka is. If they're not very good, just cast away and he'll be CC'd for a bit. And you can even pull him in afterwards if you like. If they're good though, it'll probably force them to use their E or space to avoid it. So you could even fake cast it to bait the first cooldown. So let's say you don't bait the first cooldown and he avoids it with his E. Now he only has one movement ability left. If he's still out on his own, space towards him. He'll be forced to use his space to get away from you, and now he has no iframes left. If he's smart, he'll now be playing it safe behind his team. If he's not so smart, he'll still be in a position where you can kill him. So pull him in with your Q or shoot him with your right click. And that's pretty much how peeling works. So the same thing would apply to a Raigon attacking your back line. Ideally, you want to avoid his E if he has the recast right to force him to space in. But even if he does manage to get in with his E, chuck some AoE beneath him to force the space. Now you just M1 him until he parries, and after that you just unload everything you've got on him. So it's the exact same thing as with the Ashka. When he has nothing left, either he's forced to back off, in which case you've successfully peeled him, or he stays in the fight and you just deal as much damage to him as possible. So, as you may have gathered, punishing and peeling are kinda like two sides of the same coin. You pressure the enemy enough so they're forced to use abilities to engage. Then you punish the enemy for using those abilities. And that in itself will peel for your team. I said back in January that I'd do an in-depth guide on peeling, but honestly, there's not much more to it than that. Just make sure you're always aware where everyone is. Make sure the enemy has to use cooldowns to engage by keeping them under pressure, and then punish them for using those abilities. There's actually an interesting rock, paper, scissors thing going on with how you bait out specific abilities. For example, AoEs force iframes, snipes force counters, and so on. I'll maybe do a video about that sometime next week, or maybe in 6 months' time. You never know with me. I like to keep you on your toes. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please feel free to subscribe for more Battlerite guides, news, and discussion. If you'd like to help support the channel and get some unique rewards, then head over to patreon.com/battleritesage. And don't forget to check out twitch.tv/battleritesage. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.